The paper cup in my hand crumpled, sending a waterfall of lemonade over my fingers and onto the grass. The sound of my mother's laugh, a tinkling, performative bell, usually made me force a smile. But not today. Not with her words hanging in the humid air. "Oh, don't worry about the mess, Susan. We'll have the real mom clean it up in a jiffy. This is just the babysitter." She was pointing at me. At my own daughter's 3rd birthday party. My heart didn't just sink, it vanished. The backyard, filled with colorful balloons and the shrieks of happy children, blurred into a nauseating smear. I saw my neighbor, Susan, give me a confused, pitying look before turning back to my mother. My own mother, who was now cooing at my sister, Brittany, the real mom in her eyes, handing her a plate of the cake I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. to bake and decorate. The sight was a physical blow, a deep and public humiliation that stripped me of my identity in front of everyone I knew. I felt my smile freeze into a brittle mask, my knuckles white as I clutched the broken cup, the sticky lemonade a cold shock against my skin that did nothing to break the hot wave of shame washing over me. All the effort I had put into making this day perfect for Sophie evaporated in an instant, rendered meaningless by my mother's casual cruelty. This was a new low, even for her, a betrayal so public it stole the air from my lungs and left me utterly hollow inside, standing paralyzed in the center of a celebration that now felt like a funeral for my role in this family. My name is Amelia. For 28 years, I have been the supporting character in Brittany's story. The babysitter. The afterthought. The reliable one who never needed a celebration. I looked at my husband, Mark, across the lawn. His face was a thundercloud, his body tense. He took a step forward, but I gave a tiny, sharp shake of my head. This was my battle. And it had just officially begun. The rest of the party was a slow-motion nightmare. Every time I refilled a drink or passed out a party favor, I felt the guests' eyes on me. Whispers followed me. "I just assumed she was the nanny," I heard one of Brittany's friends murmur. My mother's lie, delivered with such casual cruelty, had rewritten reality for everyone. I was an employee in my own life, a ghost at my daughter's celebration, my role reduced to that of hired help in the one place I should have been queen. I watched my mother dote on Brittany, adjusting the strap of her dress and calling her sweetheart, a term of endearment she never once used with me, and the familiar ache of being second best settled deep in my bones. I mechanically passed out slices of my beautifully decorated cake, each piece feeling like a slice of my own dignity being served to people who now saw me as the help. The sweet chocolate frosting I had so carefully piped now tasted like ash in my own mouth, a bitter end to a day that was supposed to be sweet, a day that now marked a turning point in my life. That night, after we'd put an overtired, cake-smeared Sophie to bed, Mark held me while I cried silent, furious tears. "I'm going to say something to her, Amelia. This is unacceptable." But I wiped my face, my breath catching in a hiccup. "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You don't fight a snake by yelling. You remove its fangs." Methodically. The plan didn't come to me in a rage. It came in the cold, quiet stillness of 3 a.m. as I scrolled through my mother's perfectly curated social media. Post after post glorifying Brittany, her miracle grandson, and her own flawless, generous grandmotherhood. There wasn't a single photo of me or Sophie that she hadn't been tagged in by force. Her entire identity was a beautifully wrapped lie, a fragile house of cards built on the foundation of other people's perceptions, and I was finally ready to blow it all down. I realized then that her love wasn't just withheld from me. It was a performance, a currency she spent to buy the admiration of near strangers, and I was done trying to earn a single coin. The hurt solidified into a cold, hard resolve, a blueprint for a reckoning that would be executed with precision, not passion. I opened a new document on my laptop, the blank page a promise of the new narrative I was about to write, one where I was the author, not a footnote in someone else's story. My mother's greatest pride wasn't her children. It was her status. Specifically, her position on the board of the Oak Ridge Country Club Women's League, a nest of vipers where gossip was currency and social standing was everything. She'd clawed her way into that vice president role over 2 decades of baking and backstabbing. It was her entire world. And I knew a secret. A juicy, disqualifying secret she'd let slip to me years ago, thinking I was too insignificant to remember or care. She had lied on her original application. A small lie about her educational background, but a lie nonetheless. In her world of old money and older rules, integrity was the only currency that truly mattered. That tiny fabrication was the loose thread on her expensive sweater, and I was about to give it one firm, decisive pull. She had built her kingdom on a foundation of sand, and I was the tide that was finally coming in, ready to show her how flimsy her castle really was. I knew the exact bylaw number she had violated, and I knew the woman who enforced them with religious fervor. Her greatest strength, her social standing, was about to become her most spectacular weakness. And I would be the one to watch it all crumble into dust, piece by carefully constructed piece. Monday morning, I dropped Sophie at preschool, drove to my modern, sleek office as a senior communications strategist, and closed my door. I didn't make the call in a frenzy. I scheduled it. I prepared my talking points. I was calm, collected, and smarter than she was. It was time to prove it. The call was to Eleanor Vance, the current and notoriously by-the-books president of the Oak Ridge Women's League. My mother saw Eleanor as a friend. I saw her as a principal. "Eleanor," I said, my voice warm and professional. "It's Amelia, Catherine's daughter. I'm calling with a matter of some delicate concern regarding the league's records." I pictured my mother at her own kitchen table, blissfully unaware that the trap was about to be sprung, her perfect world moments from imploding. I took a slow, deep breath, centering myself in the quiet power of my office, a space I had earned through my own hard work, far from the petty social wars she waged. I had the league's membership handbook open on my screen, the relevant section highlighted in yellow. My pen was poised over a clean notepad, ready to document every word of this pivotal conversation that would change everything forever, setting in motion a chain of events she could never take back. I didn't accuse. I didn't sound angry. I framed it as a concerned daughter helping her mother correct a decades-old clerical oversight on her application before it was ever discovered by someone with less charitable intentions. I could hear the shift in Eleanor's breathing. The quiet, sharp intake of interest. I had just handed her a weapon, wrapped in a bow of feigned concern. I hung up the phone, my hand perfectly steady. A slow smile spread across my face. The first domino had been tipped. Now I just had to wait for my mother's own arrogance to do the rest. I knew she wouldn't be able to help herself. She would lie, she would deflect, she would attack. And she would fall. The satisfaction was already beginning to bloom, warm and steady in my chest, a small flame of justice that had been waiting 28 years for enough oxygen to finally ignite. I allowed myself one moment to savor the quiet click of the receiver, the sound of a trap being set with perfect, silent efficiency. Then I turned back to my work, the calmest and most focused I had felt in months, maybe years. The storm was coming, and for the first time, I was the one holding the lightning rod, ready to direct its energy exactly where it needed to go. The first sign came 3 days later. A text from my mother. Asterisk, did you speak to Eleanor Vance about me? She's being strangely formal. Asterisk, I typed back, my fingers flying. Asterisk, I may have mentioned you were thinking of updating your info with the league. Why? Is everything okay? Asterisk, I could almost feel her panic through the screen. A week later, my sister Brittany called. Her voice was a shrill weapon. What did you do to Mom? She's a mess. The league is doing a full review of founding documents or some nonsense. This is your fault, isn't it? You're just jealous. I simply replied, I have no idea what you're talking about, Brittany. Maybe Mom should just tell the truth for once. The click of me hanging up was the most powerful sound I'd heard in weeks, a definitive end to a conversation that would have once left me shaking and defensive. I blocked Brittany's number for the rest of the day, needing the peace to focus on my work and my own family. Her predictable outrage was just another piece of evidence that my plan was working perfectly, unfolding just as I had foreseen it would, with every reaction from them fueling my resolve further. The silence from my mother's end was deafening for 2 weeks. Then, the email. A formal notice from the Oak Ridge Women's League, sent to all members. It announced the immediate removal of the vice president, Catherine, for violation of the organization's foundational integrity clause. I printed the email and kept it in my desk drawer. My little trophy. My mother exploded. The call came at midnight. She was sobbing, screaming, a raw, ugly sound I'd never heard before. "They're laughing at me. My life is over. Did you do this? Did you?" I held the phone slightly away from my ear, saying nothing, letting her hysteria fill the void until it consumed itself. Then I hung up. The silence that followed in my own home was pure, unadulterated peace, the kind of quiet that comes not from emptiness, but from the absence of a noise you've endured for far too long. I looked at the printed email. The official letter had a stark contrast to her frantic screams, and felt the first real sense of justice I had ever known. It was a cold, clear feeling, like a winter morning after a long, stifling summer. The first part of my plan was complete, and it was a total success, a victory that was both quiet and profoundly satisfying. But this wasn't the end. This was just the end of Act 1. My mother had one thing left, her narrative. She began a smear campaign, telling anyone who would listen that I was a jealous, manipulative daughter who had fabricated lies to destroy her. She was digging her own grave, and I was ready to hand her a bigger shovel. I discovered, through an old college friend who worked there, that my mother had listed her league position on her application to join the prestigious Heritage Museum Foundation Board, a position she no longer held. She was still using the lie to climb. This was the twist I needed, the perfect next step in a plan that was unfolding even better than I had hoped. Her relentless social climbing was her greatest weakness, a predictable path that made her next move as easy to anticipate as the sunrise. She couldn't help herself. Her need for status was an addiction, and she was about to suffer a very public relapse. I saved a screenshot of the museum's board application page, her lie preserved in digital ink, ready for its final use in the elegant destruction of her false reputation. Another calm, professional call. This time, to the chair of the museum's nomination committee. I provided them with the league's public announcement of her removal. I was, again, just a helpful citizen ensuring the accuracy of their records. I wasn't destroying her ambitions. I was simply removing the false foundation they were built on. 2 days later, her invitation to join the museum board was formally rescinded. The public humiliation was now complete. The country club was one thing, but the museum was her promised land, her chance to reinvent herself. That door was now slammed, locked, and the key had been melted down. I allowed myself a single, sharp moment of triumph before settling back into my calm. I pictured the look on her face when she received that email, the stunned disbelief, and I felt the scales of justice finally, perfectly balance. Her name would now be associated with scandal in the 2 most important social circles in our city. There would be no recovery from this, no spinning this narrative in her favor. She was finished in the world she loved most, and the knowledge was deeply, profoundly satisfying. The final blow came from an unexpected direction. My father called me. He was a quiet man, usually content to stay out of my mother's drama. His voice was heavy with a sadness I'd never heard. "Amelia," he said. "Your mother, she's unraveling. The things she's saying. I've asked her to move out. I can't live with this poison anymore." Her own husband, the man who had enabled her for 35 years, had finally had enough. Her arrogance and her refusal to ever be wrong had cost her not just her social standing, but her home. She had lost everything she valued because she couldn't stop lying, even to herself. The circle was now complete. Her kingdom had fallen. The queen had been dethroned not by a rival, but by the very subjects she had spent a lifetime underestimating. My father's quiet voice on the phone was the final judgment, a domestic life sentence she had brought upon herself. He sounded tired, but also, for the first time, free. And in his freedom, I found a sense of closure I hadn't known I needed, a final piece of the puzzle settling into place. I received one last email from a blocked address. It was a single, rambling paragraph, blaming me for her ruined life. I didn't respond. I hit delete. There was no satisfaction in seeing her broken, not in the way I thought there would be. There was only a profound, quiet peace. The noise was finally gone. Last weekend, Mark, Sophie, and I had a tiny, perfect picnic in our backyard. We blew bubbles, ate peanut butter sandwiches, and laughed until our sides hurt. There were no performances, no lies, no babysitters. Just a family, whole and happy. It was the birthday party Sophie should have had all along, a day of pure, uncomplicated joy that healed a little piece of my own heart. I watched Sophie's unburdened laughter and knew I had broken a cycle, ensuring her childhood would be nothing like my own. The simple, messy joy of that afternoon was a more powerful revenge than anything I could have planned. It was a testament to the life I was building, a life based on truth and unconditional love, a life that was finally, completely my own. My mother taught me a final, valuable lesson: when someone shows you who they are, believe them. So I did. And in believing her, I finally found the strength to stop trying to earn a love that was never mine to have. My victory wasn't in her downfall. It was in my quiet, powerful rise. I walked away, and I am thriving. Looking back, I see how every slight, every overlooked birthday, every time she praised Brittany for something I had done, was preparing me for this moment. It gave me the clarity to see her for who she truly was, and the strength to finally break free from a lifetime of conditioning. I was no longer the girl seeking approval. I was the woman who had outgrown the need for it from unreliable sources. My worth was no longer a topic for debate in the court of my mother's opinion. I was the judge and jury of my own life now, and the verdict was that I was enough, I was strong, and I was finally, completely free to live my life on my own terms. The fallout continued to ripple in small ways. I heard from an aunt that my mother had moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. She had stopped attending any social functions altogether. The world she had fought so hard to belong to had completely closed its doors to her. Meanwhile, my life opened up. Without the constant anxiety of trying to meet her impossible standards, I felt lighter. I started saying yes to things I normally wouldn't, like a weekend trip with Mark and Sophie, without worrying about what she would think. The freedom was intoxicating, a deep breath of fresh air after a lifetime of suffocating in her shadow. I even started a new hobby, painting, something she would have dismissed as frivolous, and found a quiet joy in the simple act of creating for no one's approval but my own. The world seemed brighter, its colors more vivid, now that I was viewing it through my own eyes and not the lens of her judgment. I felt like I was truly living for the first time, making choices based on my own desires and my family's happiness, building a future that was entirely our own. At work, my confidence soared. I led a major client presentation with an authority I didn't know I possessed. I wasn't just the reliable one anymore. I was the one who got things done, who commanded respect. My colleagues noticed the change. My boss commented on my newfound assertiveness. I just smiled. It wasn't new, it was just the real me, finally allowed to surface after years of being pushed down. I was no longer living in the shadow of my mother's opinions. My career began to flourish in new ways, opportunities opening up that I would have been too timid to pursue before. I accepted a promotion that required more leadership, stepping into a role that fit me perfectly now that I wasn't shrinking myself to make others feel bigger. I was finally being compensated and recognized for the strength I had always possessed. The professional validation was nice, but the personal victory was everything. I was building a legacy of my own, one based on competence and integrity, a legacy my daughter could be proud of one day. Mark and I grew closer than ever. The shared experience of that day and its aftermath created a deeper bond between us. He never said, "I told you so," even though he had warned me for years about my mother's toxicity. He just held my hand through it all, my steadfast supporter. We started new family traditions, like Friday movie nights with Sophie, building our own memories, our own legacy of love and laughter, completely separate from the one I was raised in. Our home became a true sanctuary, a place where I was never made to feel like I was just anything less than everything. We talked more openly, our partnership strengthened by the shared understanding of what we had overcome together. He was my rock, and our love story became one of mutual respect and unwavering support, a far cry from the transactional relationships my mother valued. I fell in love with him all over again, grateful for his quiet strength and unwavering belief in me, a partnership that felt more solid than ever before. I did think about Brittany sometimes. I wondered if she saw the truth now or if she was still wrapped up in my mother's web. We hadn't spoken since her angry phone call. Part of me felt sorry for her. She was still trapped in that cycle, still performing for a mother whose love was always conditional. My freedom meant I no longer had to compete with her. The race was over, and I had simply walked off the track, finding a better path for myself where her approval no longer mattered. I hoped one day she would find the courage to do the same, to see that the golden child is just as much a prisoner as the scapegoat, trapped in a different part of the same gilded cage. Her life, for all its apparent favoritism, seemed exhausting, a constant performance with no chance for an intermission. I sent her a silent wish for peace, from one prisoner to another, hoping she too would one day find the key to her own lock and the courage to turn it. 6 months after the birthday party, I ran into Susan, the neighbor from that day at the grocery store. She looked at me, a little hesitant at first. "Amelia," she said. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For that day at the party. I should have said something. We all should have." I smiled, a genuine, easy smile. "It's okay, Susan. Really. It all worked out for the best." Her apology was nice, but I didn't need it anymore. Their opinions no longer held any power over me. I had built a fortress of a life, and the drawbridge was permanently up against such petty judgments. I wished her a good day and continued my shopping, the brief interaction leaving no mark on the peaceful certainty I now carried with me everywhere. I was no longer defined by that moment. I was defined by everything that came after it. Her apology was for her own conscience, not for my benefit, and I was glad to let her have it. I felt no anger, only a distant pity for their collective silence that day. I focused on being the mother to Sophie that I never had. I celebrated her small victories with genuine joy. I listened to her stories without distraction. I made sure she never, for 1 second, doubted that she was the most loved and cherished little girl in the entire world. My mother's legacy would not be one of criticism and competition. It would be a lesson in what not to do, and my daughter would grow up knowing only security and unconditional love, her spirit free to grow wild and strong without being pruned by criticism. I made a conscious effort to praise her efforts, not just her achievements, to build her up from the inside so that no one could ever tear her down from the outside. I wanted her to have a core of unshakable self-worth that no one, not even a grandmother, could ever fracture. Seeing her confident, happy little face was my greatest reward, the living proof that I had chosen the right path for both of us, a path leading toward light. One evening, while cleaning out my email, I found the deleted folder and saw the last message from my mother. I didn't open it. I selected it and permanently erased it. It was a symbolic gesture, but an important one. I was finally deleting her voice from my head, from my life. The past was over. My future, the one I was building with my own 2 hands, was bright and entirely my own. I felt a chapter close, not with a bang, but with a quiet, satisfying click. It was the sound of a lock turning, not on a door to keep her out, but on a chest where I kept my own treasure safe. I closed my laptop and looked around my home, at the life I had chosen and built, and felt a profound sense of ownership and pride. Every piece of furniture, every piece of art, was a choice Mark and I had made together, free from her influence. This was my sanctuary, my kingdom, built on a foundation of truth and love that could never be shaken, a home filled with genuine laughter and peace. A year after the incident, my father started reaching out. We met for coffee, just the 2 of us. He looked healthier, happier. "It's quiet without her," he admitted. "But it's a good quiet." He apologized for not standing up for me sooner. I forgave him. He was a victim of her manipulation, too. We were slowly, carefully, building a new relationship, one based on truth and not on keeping the peace. It was a gift I hadn't expected, a relationship with my father that was finally honest and direct, without her toxic filter distorting everything between us. We started having monthly dinners, and for the first time, I felt like I was getting to know the man he really was underneath the quiet compliance. He asked about my job, my life, and listened to the answers with genuine interest. It was the father-daughter relationship I had always craved, and while it came late, it was no less precious to me, a beautiful, unexpected gift from the ashes of the old life. At Sophie's 4th birthday party, we rented a community hall and invited her little friends. It was loud, chaotic, and messy. It was perfect. I was in the middle of it all, not as a babysitter, but as the mom, the center of her universe. Mark snapped a picture of me, covered in glitter, laughing as I helped Sophie blow out her candles. That photo, full of real, unfiltered joy, is the one I keep on my desk. It is my trophy, my proof of a battle-hard one, a daily reminder that I reclaimed my story and my title as mom. Every time I look at it, I remember that the greatest victories aren't about what you tear down, but about what you build in its place. The photo captures a moment of pure, unscripted happiness, a feeling that was entirely absent from my own childhood celebrations. It reminds me that I broke the cycle, for good, and that my daughter will never know that particular kind of pain, that she will only know this kind of radiant, uncomplicated joy. My story isn't about revenge anymore. It's about reclamation. I reclaimed my identity as a mother, my peace as a person, and my power as a woman. The call I made wasn't just to Eleanor Vance, it was a call to my own courage. It was the moment I decided that I deserved better, that my daughter deserved better, and that I was strong enough to make it happen. The satisfaction doesn't come from my mother's loss, but from my own incredible gain. I gained a life where I am seen, I am valued, and I am finally completely enough. I learned to parent myself with the kindness she never showed me, and in doing so, I became the mother I always needed, for both Sophie and for the little girl I once was. My life is now a testament to resilience, a story of how I turned my pain into my greatest source of strength. The chapter of my life that included her is over, and the new one is so much brighter, filled with a peace I once thought was impossible to ever find, a peace that now feels like my birthright. I sometimes wonder if she ever thinks about that day, about the paper cup and the lemonade. I wonder if she realizes that her casual cruelty was the catalyst that set me free. Probably not. People like her rarely do the self-reflection required for that. But it doesn't matter. Her opinion is now just background noise, so faint I can barely hear it. The space she used to occupy in my mind is now filled with the sounds of my daughter's laughter and the quiet hum of my own contentment. She is a ghost from a past life, and I have firmly moved on to a brighter future. The memory of her has lost its sting, replaced by a detached pity for a woman who chose a shallow performance over the deep, messy, and beautiful reality of a family. I am free from the weight of her expectations, and the air is so much easier to breathe up here. My life is my own masterpiece now, and her criticisms are just meaningless scribbles in the margin. They hold no power over the beautiful story I am writing every single day, a story that gets better with every page I turn. So, to any woman out there who has been made to feel small, who has been told she's just anything, know this. You are the author of your story. You hold the pen. You can choose to keep turning the page on someone else's narrative, or you can start a new chapter, one you write for yourself. It won't be easy. It will be terrifying. But on the other side of that fear is a life of authenticity and power. I took back my pen. I started my new chapter. And I have never, ever looked back. My story is mine now, from the dedication page to the very end, and it is a bestseller. The plot is no longer about survival, but about joy, and every day I write another line, another paragraph, another page in a life I am proud to call my own. The power I found wasn't in destroying her, but in finally building myself up, brick by solid brick, into a woman who cannot be knocked down. My story is one of millions, but it is mine, and that makes it powerful. And your story can be too, if you find the courage to pick up the pen and begin writing your own truth today.